So my name is Rochelle Keogh, and I am from the state of Arkansas in the United States. I'm delighted to be participating, and I just want to say thank you to the organizers and the people who thought up this idea. I think it's been such a great opportunity to share ideas with colleagues. I've been tuning in off and on throughout the day and last night or in the early hours of the morning, and really feel like I'm learning a lot. But it's also just such a great way to kind of show our solidarity and support for our friends and colleagues in Puerto Rico. Our hearts go out to you, and I hope that this is one way that some of the donations from this can be used to help the families in Puerto Rico start to rebuild and reorganize their lives after the tragedy that they're experiencing. So thanks for letting us participate. So I want to talk a little bit about fostering resilience, and that this is something that we can actually work on with our students. That it's a really important idea. Our students often experience times of tragedy or stress. It could be like a natural disaster, like our friends in Puerto Rico. But it also could be caused by just other personal difficulties that they're having, or maybe even the political unrest or environment that they're living in. They're always having things in their life that create stress for them in and out of the classroom. And of course, then they come to English class and we ask them to do a really hard thing, which is learn a new language. And they're often, trying and failing and hopefully trying again. And so I do think that's important for us to just take time to help them see something outside their own experience and give them some concrete examples of things that other people who have experienced similar things that they can learn from. Let's see if I can move the slide forward here. There's this idea, a practice in Japan called kintsugi, which you might be familiar with, which I just think is a really beautiful metaphor. When an object breaks, then a precious metal as gold or silver can be used to bring the pieces together into a whole that now is repaired and more beautiful than the original object. And I think of that as a metaphor for some difficulties and challenges that our students face. Sometimes the things that they experience, especially when they fail, may leave them feeling like they have broken pieces. Those pieces might be sadness, or it might be grief, prejudice. It could just be hopelessness or fear. It could be a feeling of despair, of I'll never learn English. And all of those broken pieces, education is a way that we can take them and put them together again and make that something beautiful for the students and teach them how to do that themselves. So that message of resilience, I think, is really important for us to think about. And I appreciated Mary's comments just a minute ago about curiosity, and how when we give our students some concrete ways in class to explore curiosity, it's a process for them to learn, but we can open their minds and their minds to new ideas. And I think that's the same for resilience. So I just want to take a second to share with you a project that I worked on last year in Panama. I was lucky enough to work with some teachers there who were working mostly in primary school, some in secondary ed. We worked together for about a year over a process of several seminars. I visited their classes, and we worked together to try to explore challenges that we're having in the classroom. One of the things that kept coming up is our students need motivation. They're discouraged. They think English is hard. Some of them don't want to try. And so we kind of brainstormed together and we tried to think of some ways that we could help our students in real, real ways in the classroom to try to get some experience with failure and how to start over again with that. So here's some ideas that we came up with that we talked about in our seminar. We worked on together as a group, and then the teachers took this to their classrooms to work on with their students. So I'll share a few ideas that we came up with and then show you the results in the classroom. So one of the first things that we talked about is mindset, and we looked at the research by Carol Dweck about growth mindset, what that means, and growth mindset versus fixed mindset, and how what our thoughts are and our mindset is really affects our actions. And then our actions, of course, determine the results in the classroom and in the lives of the students. So if our students want to be more successful and we want to help them do better in school, then we have to back up to their thinking, right? Because their thinking is going to determine their behavior in the classroom. So we talked a lot about how can we teach our students to change self-talk. And one idea that we had can see on the slide on the right-hand side, we gave the students some situations that might be common for them to face, like a challenge of, hey, you've got a vocabulary test coming up, you need to learn these 15 words. And then we asked them to just brainstorm with a partner, what would your normal reaction to this situation be? And the students would often say things like, oh, this is hard, or I can't do it, or I give up, or I'm not good at English. Those are kinds of student talk that we hear a lot. And so as the students looked at those situations and kind of came up with what they thought, how they thought they would normally respond, we asked them to then brainstorm how could they improve that self-talk? How could they make it more growth oriented? So maybe instead of saying, I'm not any good at English, I can't do this, they could say, I can't do this yet, but my teacher knows how to do it and she can help me succeed. So in this way, the students got to see how they could change how they may normally react to hard things. And by just looking at it differently, they could be a little bit more resilient and learn to try again. The second thing that we thought was really important for our students to know is that failure is part of the process of learning. And you can see on this slide down in the right-hand corner here, a learning activity that we did with them is to divide the students into groups of 2 or 3 and have them all pick one of the items off this list, like potato chips, microwave, super glue. And then they just did a quick Google search to find out how these things came to be. And what they all discovered in their 5 minutes and 10 minutes of research is that all of these things were invented by accident. A scientist or inventor was working on a big problem, something different, completely different, and they made a mistake. And then suddenly they had penicillin or popsicles, or my favorite on that list, ice cream cones. And so it was a fun activity that got the students really involved, but also helped them see like failure's okay. Failure is actually can come up, you could come up with something even better sometimes when that happens. So students of all ages really enjoyed that activity. A couple other things that we thought of and used in the classroom is how we could use simple art projects and some fine arts and music to really reinforce the ideas of what to do with failure and how to react to challenge. So the students created some posters, did some coloring. We also, as a team of teachers, we brainstormed some songs that we thought would really be interesting for our students and resonate with our students that also had sort of a growth mindset message and how we could use those in the classroom. A lot of teachers found things age appropriate for their students that worked very well in just discussing some of these ideas. And then my favorite there at the front, Humpty Dumpty. Bringing literature in the classroom is one of my favorite ways to teach ideas and lessons while you're also looking at language fluency. If you're not familiar with this book called After the Fall, it's so great. It's the story of what happens to Humpty Dumpty after he fell off the wall and smashed into 100 pieces. In the book, he goes to the hospital, he gets repaired, but he discovers that he's not exactly as he once was. He's still broken. And through the book, he discovers that being broken is really hard, but also he discovered that becoming something different than you thought you were going to be can be so much better. So that's a really cool book for students of all ages. It's a kid's picture book. It's pretty simple. Well, we just talked about how literature could be used to give students concrete examples of people who try and fail or people who have a resilient attitude. So what happened when we did this? Here's some just comments from the teachers of what they noticed in their classroom as they started doing these activities with students. One teacher said, my students were very impacted by talking about perseverance and trying again. I feel I could transmit to them my own motivation as we talked. I really love that because as teachers, we often have a lot of motivation about what we're teaching, and sometimes our students don't. But these kinds of activities allow the teacher to really transfer their excitement and their motivation about learning and show the kids in real ways how they could be excited too. Another teacher said, I've changed the way I see my students. I love that. Just studying about growth mindset and thinking about how to use that with their class. We were thinking about how it would help the students, but this teacher expresses, it changed me, right? It changed the way I see my students. I help them overcome their failings and learn from them. My way of teaching has changed because now I am a growth mindset teacher. Really like that. Another teacher said, I'm always trying to motivate my students to learn new things. I think we can all resonate with that. And then now I feel empowered to help my students reach their goals. I love that. I think that these simple ideas that make resilience and overcoming challenges really concrete for students give us some power as teachers to help them start to use those ideas in their language learning and in their life. And then the last few things I just wanted to share is how it affected students in the class. One of the teachers just noticed that once they started doing these kinds of training and activities with their students, a lot of students who didn't try before put extra effort into their assignments. Some of them asked for help more often. Even the young students, wanted to stand and participate more often than they did before. So that shows that's really great for us as language teachers to see some of these positive student learning behaviors happening as a result. And then finally, this teacher said, I have noticed that kids who did not show interest in class before have changed their behavior. They're more motivated and they have become more responsible. For me, that kind of sums it up. We as teachers want responsible students who are motivated and who show interest. And these kinds of exercises, even done infrequently, or just in a small amount of time. You don't have to take a whole class period to do it. You can do it in a small 10, 15 minutes at a time. This can really help our students to buy into the learning process and understand that they can succeed. And I hope that that's something that you consider in your classes while we're thinking about teaching English and working on fluency, that we also take time to give models to students for how they can be resilient in their own life and continue on in their language learning process. Thank you.